happened is Virginia's opening back up. I border with Virginia, and South Carolina line is only an hour away. And so I would, if I was a parent and either one of those states are playing, and I had a kid that was getting recruited, I would transfer in.
Yeah,
I mean, you have to, because this is the thing. We had one of our top receivers this year was also a great baseball player, and he had a scholarship, and they called him and said, we got to pull the scholarship because we got so many seniors that are staying for their 5th Corona year, and I get that.
Yeah, totally.
But I told them, I was like, that's not going to be a 1-year fix. That's going to take a full 4-year cycle to get back to full scholarship mode where you're offering full scholarships, even for the JUCOs.
Yep.
I mean, and because there's a bunch of JUCO players. If college football didn't happen this year, and it would be a 4-year train wreck from everybody from Division I all the way down to the bottom, recruiting cycle wise, because there's so many kids that on a grant to stay over. And in baseball and those other sports in the spring, you're going to see that.
Yeah.
And it's going to take a 4-year cycle to fix it.
It's crazy, man. It's just crazy times. It's so far up in the air, and it seems like things change up to the day, hour even. I mean, I've heard some different half of today that was different when we started today. So
yeah,
that's nuts. Okay, cool. So just to let you know, we just did turn on the live broadcast. Just let people kind of cycle in. How's everyone doing? There's a few people streaming in right now. Thanks for joining us, everyone out there. As you can see, I have the great Coach Patrick Taylor in the house. How's it going, Coach?
It's going great, man. It's a nice day today. We hadn't had rain for 3 straight days, so I'm kind of excited. It's been rainy in North Carolina, and it's hard to get out with all this stuff being kept inside, and can't go many places when it's raining. It's even worse.
Exactly. You want to at least go out for a walk or anything. We actually took 5 kids on Sunday out to throw the ball around for the first time in 2 months. It was like Christmas all over again. So
yeah.
I hear that. We've had some crazy weather up here. It's been 100 degrees in Northern California, which is hot for us even. So it's just been a crazy time all the way around. So we're going to get started here in a second, guys, with Coach. I just wanted to let everyone kind of come in, and while we're doing that, just shoot the breeze a little bit while we let everyone come in. We're just kind of kicking things off and talking a little ball here. So let me see. Oh, we got a couple questions for you already. Coach Jolly is in the house. We'll say hello to everyone, Coach. I'm going to put this on. If you can see on the screen here, we're able to put the comments up. So I'm sure there's going to be some comments directly at you here. So we already got one. We'll get into 6 here in a second, Devin. We're not going to get that deep right off the bat, but we are going to get into 6. Obviously, that's why we're here. So, Coach, I wanted to talk a little bit about everything that you have coming up. I saw you're coaching, or you're teaching at the National Air Raid Clinic that went online. And when is that happening?
It's June. It's the weekend of June 19th, 20th, 21st. And it's online. And it's kind of weird for me to even be a part of guys that are speaking with Coach Mummy and Coach Leach and Matt Mummy. And
oh, awesome.
There's a lot of great high school coaches that are speaking. George Coldharp, Drew Piscopo, who's a great friend of mine too, and George also. I think there's 4 North Carolina high school coaches that are on the docket to speak, along with other guys. I think Sean Leota's speaking. There's a lot of people. So to be in that company, I was like, you guys sure you want to hear me talk with all these other guys on here that's doing big things? And so it's going to be a fun weekend and everything. And I hate that it's online, but I'll be honest with you, this is kind of a great thing because you don't have to get a car and travel anymore.
Yeah, honestly.
I hate not meeting coaches face to face and having that interaction. But as far as these big clinics might have to look at doing this, because I used to have to drive from here to Pittsburgh or here to, and it's 8-10 hours in a car. It's kind of tough.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, if nothing else, it's just a little more convenient, and it might allow you to say yes to a couple more things that you might not be able to. And I've seen you do some other, you did a North Carolina one just last week, I think I saw on Twitter. I didn't catch it myself yet, but I heard you did that. And And it seems like you're always talking six. Is that usually the theme for you, or what?
Yeah, and I kind of, there's a lot of people ask us about how we do a lot of that stuff, and the Virginia North Carolina clinic I spoke in, I actually got into how we teach the quarterback really to run our whole offense based on how six is taught, and that was really the first time. That was the first time that I really had broke that down on film for people, and it wasn't that I was hiding it. I was like, I think this is a more interesting thing. But six has been so prolific for us over 5 years that it's been so good for us that I think that's why so many people ask about it.
Yeah. Well, and to Coach Hefe, what's up, Hefe, from Northern California? One of the few California guys I get on these shows. He says you belong in that lineup, so I totally agree. Why do you think there's so many air raid guys? I keep meaning to ask you and Salas and all these guys. Why do you think there's so many in North Carolina and the Carolinas in general? Is that
I don't know. 19 years ago when I was in Georgia, when I was running the air raid, there wasn't that many of us.
Yeah.
And when I first came to North Carolina 10 years ago, there wasn't a lot in North Carolina either. And I think that, with Lincoln Riley being at ECU, and, when Lincoln was there with Ruffin and all those guys, they had a good run at ECU.
Mm-hmm.
Coach Longo left. He was at San Antonio and then, Ole Miss. Now he's at UNC, and, he's an air raid guy. And there's a lot of people that have transitioned over to it. Just in our conference, we were talking about it. In our conference, the first 5 years I was in that conference, a running back and a middle linebacker was always the player of the year. For the last 5 years, it's been a quarterback and a nickel defender or a strong safety.
Oh, really?
And that kind of tells you how we were the first one to start throwing it in our area. Yeah. And that tells you how many people now are throwing it in our area, and so on and so forth. So I think you can kind of see a shift, and it's out there now. I mean, you can find a lot of information on it, and I think the stigma of you have to throw it every down is now gone with Oklahoma, what they do, and other schools. Even with Cal 3 years ago, there's a stigma that you don't have to throw it every down. It's really a mindset more so than it is anything else.
Yeah, and that's for sure. And I love Oklahoma. Might be my favorite air raid team because I love GT. I know you're a big GT guy as well, Salas as well, and I just love watching them, and it's because it's great football, right? Like if I ran GT counter 50 times, like Coach Salas says, and it's working, let's just do it. Like let's get after it. And if we run 50 times and that works, let's get after it. It's all good. It's all air raid, and let's go. The point is just spread the ball around and get these kids some more touches. And for us, our mission, all these middle school coaches that you're talking to right now, and youth coaches too, we have some of the lower levels beyond us on these chats. It's all about participation numbers. I mean, that's where I started my journey, was just trying to get participation numbers back up. I knew I wanted to run the spread. I started researching. I stumbled upon you and Mackie, literally you on Mackie's show talking all Verts, and I was like, this is exactly what I was looking for, because I had my 8th grade team. For lack of knowledge, I was running triple option split back veer. We're a De La Salle feeder. We ran that, and I grew up in the wing tee, but I knew split back veer for little guys, like we're just hitting that hole hard. You're getting through there and popping out. But then toward the end of the year, I had them in quads, and I'm like, I just need to get the ball out quickly. They're not spreading out. They're not defending us. How do we do this? And then after that season, I found you guys, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I'm doing. But we'll get into that in a second. I don't want to get too far off. Now, I think we've let enough time go by. So let's kind of just start off by, I know everyone in this audience knows for sure who you are, because I've literally been talking about you since I started this journey. I put together a middle school webinar series, like A to Z. And it's all based on 6, and it's all based on the way you run 6 against cover 1, cover 0. And I've adopted that into my cover 3 because in the youth leagues, it's kind of the same thing. And so literally that's how I started my series, and I said, this is where I got it from Patrick Taylor. And so I know everyone in this audience knows who you are, but just in case I catch a new audience member coming in, can you just give us a little bit of your background so they just know before we get started more about you?
Yeah, I started coaching in Macon, Georgia, in my hometown, and coached there and became a head coach and started running the air raid. I've been following the air raid since the late 90s when it came to Kentucky because, oddly enough, I'm a big Kentucky fan. So that's my birth state. And so when that came into effect, I was in college when Tim Couch came. And so it was, that was some good times for Kentucky football. And I just decided that if I ever got to be a coach, I understood what they had at that time recruiting wise, and they were going against the elite Floridas and LSUs at that time that were sending multiple kids to the NFL and beating Alabama for the first time in 75 years. I was like, there's something to this. And I just dove into it and begged, borrowed, and steal what I could before the internet was popular, and hounded Coach Mummy a whole lot through email and everything else. And he and I became friends over the years. And, he's showed me a lot of things. And that's one of the things. And I came to North Carolina in 2010. Little bit better situation to raise my kids. And so I went back to the defensive side of the ball for my first 3 or 4 years. And in 2015, we put the air raid in at North Surrey, and I was an offensive coordinator. And since then, we're over 22,000 yards. This past year is my first year as a head coach there. So second stint as a head coach in my career, we had 5,300 yards in 12 games. So it was, we've done it both ways, running it and throwing it in the air raid. And it's just something that I feel like year in and year out, you can adjust to your talent level and you don't have to change and move things around. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you for that. And that's such a cool journey to you getting to pick the brain of Mummy. I think a lot of us out here are getting certified. I got certified this year, but there's nothing like hearing from him in particular. So that must have been a really cool thing for you. And thank you for taking that knowledge and putting it on all of us. So very cool. And then, so just curious if you played youth football for our audience out here.
I did not. I did not play youth football. We moved to Macon when I was young. Like I said, I was born in Kentucky, and I did not play youth football. I played basketball and baseball. I did not pick up football until the 6th grade. And I loved football, and I was a huge football fan and played backyard and schoolyard every day in the fall, like most kids in the neighborhood back then. But I didn't play organized football until the 6th grade. And in high school, I was in a straight T offense, and I was a tight end and an outside linebacker, and we were in a straight T. And I love that offense when it's ran right. It is a thing of beauty the way it's orchestrated. But really, I'm applying the same thing my coach did in the straight T. We didn't have but a handful of plays, and we based everything on execution and seeing how the defense was aligned and that kind of thing. So the philosophy is really the same, even though the product might seem different. But football, out of all three, I was probably the least. That was probably my least sport as far as athletically. But it taught me more about life than the other two that I played. And I do think playing the other two, though, helped me in football because basketball teaches you feet and hands, and baseball teaches you eyes and hand-eye coordination and things. So I think it was all worked together to help me. But I loved football the most, but I probably wasn't the best football player,
Well, I've found that the coaches that I'm learning the most from and that I learned the most from as a kid, and I'm watching a lot of coaches right now kind of get their feet under them. They weren't dominant football players. There were people that had to figure out how to get better and how to figure out that one step. I just need that one extra step to do something to win whatever battle I'm in. So I think that goes a long way into kind of seeing it from that perspective for the kids that just don't naturally run a 4.4 or whatever the case may be. Right. So that's great. That's great. Okay, guys, before we get into some of these questions about air raid and 6, just want to remind the audience out there, if you have any questions for Coach Taylor, he's graciously said he'll try to answer as many as he can tonight. So feel free to throw your comments in the chat below. I'll put them up on the screen when we have time, and we'll ask them. So, Coach, I just wanted to, before we get into 6, because I really want to talk about that. That's my favorite play, obviously. And like I said, it's kind of what we base everything that we do on. I've been asking coaches like you, like Salas and Knapp and all these guys, a few air raid questions that, I think everyone understands what we're trying to get accomplished and understands what the air raid's all about at this point. But there's a few little gray area that each coach does a little different. So if you don't mind, I'd love to kind of just rattle a couple of those off to you, and just so the audience can know how you handle those situations. Okay. Awesome. All right. So swing or shoot for your back?
Depends on the concept. I like the shoot in the stick and corner concept, because I think it stretches the flat faster. And I was a big swing guy, and I just ran the swing route on everything.
Yeah.
And when you really look at it, the way defenses are playing now, they will hang on the stick and the snag and rally to the swing, because they know that they've got depth, and for defense, depth equals leverage. But if you're threatening the line of scrimmage now and horizontally stretching the defense, they've got to make a decision right now. They're going to get out leveraged inside out. So I do think the shoot in some ways is an easier ball to throw, because you are throwing it forward. It is at a weird angle, but it's throwing forward. But we, it's on like our drop back stuff. We will swing it in like sail and cross and stuff like that. And mesh, we will swing to that side with that, but because we don't want two people in the same basically area with those low crossers. But it really kind of your flavor. But we're a shoot swing based on the play versus whether we're sold out to one or the other.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And one of my biggest issues last year with it sounds like you're talking about quick game in general, to make that overhang defender choose faster. That was my problem. He would back up straight or just stand still, and the quarterback, didn't know which one to go to. And if there's any hesitation, we're in problem, or we have some trouble, right? So I've been trying to think and task myself with how do I make that guy declare faster, right? I don't know if I was thinking about maybe stacking those guys on when we're in trips out to that side, or maybe push motioning the inside guy out so he'd at least start going. But anyway, I mean, I think that the shoot is that does make a lot of sense, because it does make him decide right now what he has to do. All right, cool. So backside of quick game, do you have a standard set you run back there, like double stick, double slant, or you just?
Yeah. We use 6 on the backside of anything that doesn't cross. So anything but shallow, Y cross, mesh. So if we're in 2x2 and we're running 8 corner to the back, the other 2 receivers, we're basically running open grass to the backside. And that has helped us a ton with split defenses, especially split coverage defenses like the 4-2-5. They got to declare that nickel somewhere.
Yeah. And
that they're going to play some type of quarters or robber, or they're going to play something, but to the backside, they got to play match. They got to play quarters, cover 2. That weak safety's got to be in run support for the weak side. And so we just developed anything away from quick game that's not crossing. We're going to run open grass to that side. So we're running a split play, and we're running, against a split coverage. And we tell our quarterback, if they're off and we don't tag something, or he doesn't tag something, we're running double hitches. And if they're pressed, we're running double slants. Those are the only 2 definites that we're going to do. And but we can easily tag a bubble. We can easily tag a smoke screen. We can tag a fade out. One of the big things that we do is when we run corner, if that safety is really lazy, that weak safety is lazy getting out, we will post the inside slot away from corner. So now you're getting a post corner. You're getting a post corner split in the field. And I'm just tagging one route, or the quarterback's tagging one route, and I don't have to put that play in. So I can tag all the backside of my quick game to complement the front side based on what the weak safety's doing. And that helps tremendously for defenses that want to, if they're always going to call strength to the back or the field, and the back's to the field, then you've got them kind of in a bad situation. You're making that safety play you're making him play football and not just hang out and help. And so that we kind of went to that because I was like, and I tell our quarterbacks when we go through the process, that's the last question he answers before he snaps the ball when we got a concept called, other than sick. Is there any grass to the backside? And I tell them, listen, if there's grass there, don't worry about the concept. We'll throw this open grass over here, this 6 concept, and make them even up and play us even, and then we'll work the concept. But if it's there now, take it.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the biggest things. That's one of the biggest things that we've kind of transitioned to versus, in the old era, there was a lot of curl flat. There was a lot of double slants. There was a lot of that kind of stuff. And I was like, why don't we just divorce it? Because back then they weren't seeing divorce coverage. And why don't we just divorce the concept? We're going to run 6 unless we're running shallow cross mesh. And they're going to have to play 2 plays at one time, and it's very easy for us to operate.
Man, that has my wheels turning, Coach. So we've been doing double stick backside, and I'm still new to this. I'd be the first one to tell you, and I was just trying to keep it simple, and it worked. I mean, like you said, if either one of those guys the defender was off 7 yards, or maybe that backside slot was open, he just run a 3-step stick, and well, they were running 3-step sticks anyway. They would just expect the ball, and the quarterbacks would have to throw it back there. But I mean, the way you just described that on the backside, and we have out of 14 games last year, 13 of them were single high safety. I could do almost essentially a backside corner, like you said, or a post, and we're putting that safety in conflict. If I just run stick or 8, I mean, corner was my second favorite play.
Or tag him on a dig, and now that dig's coming across that safety's face, and
oh my gosh,
we can't get back and help on that seam. It's one of those things that you can disguise it so much. And where we find it at is that weak side inside linebacker. If your back is opposite of him, he's got to look for run first because he's got to be able to take care of it, especially as big a counter team as we are. So now he can't fly out. He just can't fly out to the hook curls quick. And if you keep throwing that stick, if they're just going to play off, or you start tagging stuff on bubbles and stuff, you got him worried about the pass. You sneak a run in and it hits bigger because now he's got his eyeballs out there into the hook curl. And so we're really isolating defenders and making them play twice as much space than they really are designed to in the defense.
Holy cow. Yeah, that's amazing. And so just to answer Todd Place's question from the question before, basically that is what Coach was saying. I don't know if that's a rule or not, but it sounds like anything drop back game, you're swinging them because it's going to take a little longer anyway. You're not putting anyone in conflict. You just want him to be able to see the field. And then in a quick game, since we're trying to make that defender declare as fast as possible, he's running a shoot, which sounds great. One other question before I move on to the next question. So backside open grass, is the slot outside releasing or inside? I see it in the book and the videos kind of both ways. I don't
push the backside open grass, and that's a great question because he does see both. I tell them best available release based on what they're getting backside. That's kind of the thing I kind of leave with them is I don't try to overcomplicate for them. I try them best available release back there because if we're coming there now. I mean, it is a catch throw or we're going to set up and throw it quicker. And especially if we've got a drop back called like Sale, like 94, and then you got the twins to the backside. Well, we're going to catch and throw that ball. It's going to be a quick game type step for the quarterback if we're going to throw open grass to the backside. And I tell them best available. And to be honest, my slot receivers are very savvy. And I let them play ball. I let them play ball. And that's one of the biggest things that I have done and seen, that don't overcoach them. Now I'll tell them if the guy's hard inside, I want to outside release him. If he's in the middle of you, push him, try to make him decide and work. And if he's outside, just blow through the seam right now. Don't worry about anything, take his leverage away from him right now. But that's about as complicated as we get with it because I want to keep it, and I don't mean this. I want to keep it so simple that a youth league could run it.
Yep.
Because if I can do that, then high schoolers ought to be able to really, 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 with their ability, be able to do things a lot faster. and make guys that are not as good even better.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, I think that's why I attached to the way you run six versus, I watch videos from probably 7 or 8 guys that run all 4 verts certain ways. But when I saw yours, it was like so simple. I could picture my 8-year-olds doing it, like literally. And I took it to the field with 14-year-olds.
And the thing about it is 15 years ago, 10 years ago, we didn't see, until TCU came up with this. I don't say they came up with it, but until TCU made this divorce coverage and Alabama making this divorce coverage, you didn't see it a lot in high schools and even middle schools. You saw a static cover 4, cover 3, man free, cover 0. And now with this hybrid defense, and defense is becoming a positionless side of the ball, you got to really account who is their strength. It isn't the Mike or the Sam or the Will anymore. It's that person that they got to, how they're going to take care of that back, offset that quarterback. And so it made it easier for us, and it attached our quick game to a drop back. And I just wanted to exploit the whole field without having to always call a crosser.
Yeah.
And so now we're taking that 6 mindset and that crossing mindset and putting it in divorce in the field. If you're going to play a divorce coverage, we're going to call a divorce play.
Yeah.
And we can tag a route to enhance that play and give us. We don't have shots in our offense anymore because of open grass on the backside. I can tag a shot, and I don't have to practice a shot now,
right,
to waste time in practice.
And you're basing that shot off of actual. Okay, I see that safety sneaking down. I'm going to take my shot off something more than just, I think this would be a good time.
The first time that safety's real quick getting off the hash on that corner route, I'm going to call the post I'm going to call corner again and call the opposite slot on a post, and we're going to bang that post, for a touchdown. Or it gets into the point where they learn to run a dig. If that safety's hanging high, he'll just dig it out, and we'll throw the dig where the corner just came from, just the corner route left, and that's the kids playing ball. But it's helped us so much be dynamic when we weren't necessarily as fast or better than the other team.
And guys, this is not just theory that he's talking about. I'm going to put the links below. I was just watching, I fell asleep last year watching you and Mackie talk 4 verts. But he has clips, he has film in there of his team literally doing what he's just saying. He's running all verts, and they tag the backside slot to come hunt in the middle of the field. And I mean, it literally exactly what he's talking about happens on that film. So I'll put the links below so you guys can go watch it, and we'll get into all his stuff in a second, but it's all legit. And Coach Salas is in the house. Hey, Coach.
Absolutely. Coach Jolly said it right. It's right. He's 100% right. When he said PE rules football, it really is. And I love that. I mean, I do love that.
Exactly. Get open and find grass. Coach Salas, how you doing? He loves that you're, game changer, and the game changer is open grass on the backside. So how's it going, Coach?
Coach is great. Now, Coach Salas he was one of the first. He might have been the first air raid coach in Georgia when he was down there. Me and him talked at a clinic we spoke at in East North Carolina right before COVID happened, and he is a tremendous wealth of knowledge on the air raid. Don't let him hide from you, because he is really, really good at what they do, and he has been in Georgia and North Carolina also. And I'm just going to tell you right now, he has a wealth of knowledge in this offense.
Oh yeah, we've been using Coach Salas for everything he's worth. He's been attending all of our roundtables and really helping me legitimize this whole thing with the middle school coaches and giving some real backing behind it. So yeah, he's legit. Everyone knows, and this group loves him. And thank you for continuing to come on. And then yeah, like you said, Coach Jolly says PE rules football. I mean, I've called it playground a little bit, basketball on grass. I've heard you talk about it that way, but it really is. And the kids, especially at the middle school level, most of these kids when they think, Pop Warner or middle school football, they're thinking, okay, well, one or two guys is just going to pound the rock all day and get 30 carries each. And if I'm not built like a running back or a wildcat quarterback, I'm playing defense or blocking. So that's been a huge reason why I've wanted to get these kids playing this style of ball. So right on, Coach Jolly. All right, cool. Next thing, what's your run plays?
We run GT counter a lot. That was probably 60% of our run game. If I'm just basing it off play calls, We also run a version of inside zone, and we're not a very good inside zone team, just because we haven't had those backs in the past. So that's why we've been a gap scheme team. We also run a version of dart. Dart and one back power is the same for us. We just pull a tackle versus a 4-man front and a guard versus a 3-man front. And that's basically it. We put a draw in, but we don't run it as much because counter just wrecks so many things in the spread offense and defenses in that 6-man box that even if you don't have a running quarterback, you can make it work. And with the blocking angles, you can teach your center to flat trap the backside lineman. And we're so deep at the line of scrimmage with our guard and tackles that the 5 technique, if he tries to chase, he has to run around so much trash that your back's going to be out the front door before he can run you down. Yeah. Because we teach the center to flat trap, and that means he's going to turn his shoulders and look at the sideline. And when he blocks back, and it just creates so much ruckus that we've done it both with Q. If we've got a running quarterback, we also run Q counter, of course. And if they're a 6-man box, you've got everybody blocked now, and they've got to bring a safety. Yeah. And so, or an outside backer. And so that makes it even better.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that play so much. It's, as an air raid guy now, I consider myself, it still might be my favorite play in the playbook. Honestly, I just love it so much. It's so much attitude behind it. And like you said, there's just so much for a kid to deal with from a linebacker, or even the D lineman. I mean, they're getting hit straight on their side. They're not expecting that, and it's happening with force.
And when you line up in 2x2 and run it, and the quarterback's throwing double slants on the side that your guard and tackle's pulling from, you put that linebacker in a 3-way bind. And he's in a bad way. And that's our number one RPOs. We run GT counter out of 2x2, and we throw the double slants. We just say, read that middle backer. If he flies over the top, throw the slant, no matter what.
Oh my gosh. That's,
and if he stays, well, we're blocking a 5-man box, just let it ride.
So cool.
So it's fun.
Love it. Okay, cool. How many concepts, plays might be the wrong word because some people think, counter left and counter right's 2 plays, but just concept wise, how many concepts would you say in your playbook you have?
We run, and I'll call them by name for guys. I don't know how much y'all talk about the number system in the air raid.
Oh, we don't.
Quick game wise, we run stick, corner, and 6 is quick game for us.
Yep, same.
And we run 66 and 617, 619 are the same play, so that's 5 quicks. And 66 is hitch, slot, fade, and 617, 619 is fade on the outside and 3-step quick out by the 2 slots out of 2x2. We only run those out of 2x2. So 66 and 617, 619 are only ran from 2x2. Drop back game, we run mesh, cross, and we got our shallow, which is really not so much a drop back anymore, but we don't run sail by itself anymore because it's the front side of our cross. Right. So if I want to run sail, I just call cross. Right. And then we run Randy and Larry, which are your tunnel, Randy and Larry, Rita and Lisa, which are your screens for the wide receivers. And that's it for passing game. That's all we do, passing game wise. And then, the run plays I just told you, our concepts are very small.
I mean, and 15?
Yeah, maybe. I think it's it's about 14 total if you count the runs. Yes, it's awesome. 5. If there's 8 pass concepts and 4, so 12. 12
guys out there listening and watching this back, just to reinforce it. I when I did that webinar series, I really stressed them to hold it under 12 or under. I didn't say that was an air raid thing. I'm just saying it's small playbook is, but the way I put out the 3-day schedule that I stole from Salas, if you choose 12, you can plug them in, and you got your 3-day install, and your camp is set, and you're good to go. I had 11 last year, and I want to put cross in this year because I'm so jealous of watching you guys run that every year and crushing people with it. I was a little scared last year just because it was my first year. So yeah, we do it by name, and I appreciate you using the name. I'd never learned the numbers that well, so I didn't feel comfortable teaching that way. But we had 6 because of you. 6 was our quick game. corner was deadly for us because a single high safety is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And stick, and then mesh and shallow, and that was it. Quick screens and 3 runs. So, yeah, I mean the small playbook, guys. It's not just lip service. You've heard Salah say it. Now you've heard Coach Patrick Taylor say it. Knapp said it as well. I think he only had 14 plays when I asked him. Mm-hmm. It's the truth, guys. Just keep it simple. You don't need to. A big playbook doesn't equal big brains. It doesn't equal anything except probably an average record, to be quite honest. So, thanks for reinforcing that. Let's go. How do you get your plays in? Is it hand signals or wristbands? What do you guys do?
Coach, I know a lot of people do a lot of things. The wristbands, there's people do great things with that. We only signal. In fact, our whole offense doesn't talk anymore. The only thing that's said is the cadence. And that's probably one of the things that we went to last year that helped us tremendously. Because I said this, and I know this sounds kind of cruel. If somebody shoots you a bird from across the parking lot, you know what they mean. No matter if there's a rock concert going on and it's blaring loud, or 5 o'clock traffic in Manhattan, you know what that means. If you're yelling 16 or 17, or you're trying to run plays in, things get lost in translation. And I've had it happen personally, and that's why I've stripped it down to that point. If you really go back and study why the huddle was created, it was because when the Deaf Academy was playing, everybody could read sign language, so they would huddle and look at each other and read lips.
Oh my God.
And so I go back to the opposite thing is, we signal everything in. We don't have a board. We don't have any of that stuff. We signal stuff, and it's very simple. And, that's the thing that I love about it is it's seamless and everybody can do it without talking. Yeah. And so you get the signal and you're rolling and you're ready to go, and the quarterback calls out the cadence and the play snapped and we're ready to go.
Just going. And then just motion. So I started with wristbands last year. I quickly scrapped it. It just was taking too long. It was confusing. I was having to do manually cut out these sheets of paper and stuff them in every week because I change it every week. So I love that. And we did the same thing. For my own point and sake, how do you get motion? Do you build in motions so they just know that's part of the play, or are you actually signaling motions too?
We signal in the motion. We have 2 motions in our offense. We have zip and zap. And zip is coming all the way across the ball, and zap is motioning into a nested stack, or you bring the X into where the Y would line up and vice versa. And we just have 2 hand signals for that. So if we want to tag something, and we number our receivers. So because we don't flip our X and our Z, we base it out of 2x2. The H is 2, the Y is 3, the Z is 4, the R, or the 5th receiver, if we put one in the game for empty, is 5. So if we want to tag somebody on a motion, we would go 5. And then give them the motion call, and then they know that they're motioning, and we don't have to call another formation
right
to tell who's on and off the ball. We teach the slots and stuff based on who's on and who's off, that if we motion, you're on that play because the guy beside you's motioning, and you got to be the 7th man on the line of scrimmage. So we keep it so simple that the motion tells people who's got to be on and who's got to be off versus having to call a whole new formation.
Yeah.
To get that guy off the ball so he can motion if he's an outside guy, or so on and so forth.
I love it. Yeah, that might be the most common question I hear is how do you guys get the play in? How do you get the play in? So everyone does it different, but you'll find your rhythm. But I love the hand signals as well. I think it's just you can do it quickly on the fly. Everyone knows what you're talking about, and these kids, even at the lower levels where we are, they're more than smart enough to memorize. I mean, they've been doing it with baseball their whole life too, right?
Exactly. It's what baseball coaches have done forever.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, cool. Before we move on to the next one, this GT counter came in from Curtis. This question came in, and I have a similar question because we did run into a couple teams that just started bringing the house on us when we started passing on them, and then we'd run into trying to run GT. It does take a little longer to develop because you got to counter step and all that. Any answers for that, or you just continue to run it, or what do you if you start to see them blitz in double A gap, or just being aggressive?
I love blitzing defenses against counter because that now means we're going to pull up on safeties and outside linebackers. Our rule is the same as any gap scheme as far as the offensive line goes, and we take the first threat. I think the difference being that you have to kind of look at when you're talking about getting an all out blitz like that. We don't counter step our counter.
Oh,
we width step it like you're going to take we just take a half width step and we keep our inside foot. We keep our inside foot planted and we just get a width step and we get right back through it. Because we're such an air raid football team that, snapping your head around and giving that old counter step, I think that's great when you're under center, you're in a pistol, or you're in some kind of power look. Because that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to look like a downhill approach to that side. Right. In the spread offense, you're not fooling anybody. I think you're actually giving them a key to what you're running it. But if we take a width step, it looks like we're taking off on a swing route. If we just if we just turn our neck and width step a half with our outside foot, that freezes those linebackers just for a second, thinking we're taking off on a pass, and then we come right back through with the we call it a slide and dive. We just replace that foot and get through, and it turns into like an inside zone angle handoff. And we tell that running back, you're faster than those guys on defense. Get through the hole and get there. And, I think because, I think everybody's probably gets their centers and guards. I mean, their guards and tackles back as far as you can and still being legal. I mean, it sometimes looks like we got 7 guys in the backfield. We get them back as far as we can to help those pulling lanes. So now that, if we get our across on the first 2 guys, we're going to get our pullers through.
Yeah.
And when you start looking about when you move your lineman back off the line of scrimmage, how much better pulling angles it gives you off the snap of the ball, penetration won't kill you. And if you get those front 3 blocking down, if you get around the front side, there's been many times we're pulling up on air. We don't even kick the guy. It's 2 guys leading. It looks like old power sweep. We pull both guards almost because we got 2 guys out there running and looking for the first thing to hit. So I think a lot of it depends on the depth of your lineman. I think also we cut out the counter step because we weren't fooling anybody. We were actually taking them to the play because it was the only time we done it. So you were deadly giving the play away.
That's genius. And that's like the third golden nugget. And we haven't even got to the meat and potatoes of this thing. So guys, that right there, I'm taking that right now. No more jab step because that is, we came from a split back veer offense. That's what we were doing before. And you set it up by doing outside veer left, outside veer right. And then, then you throw the counter off that, but you got to set it up in that old style, but you're not setting anything else up. And that's a great point. I love that. Just sidestep and then come get it. Love it. Thank you. I'm taking that. Very cool. And then, so last one, because I really want to get to 6. I'm so excited about that. Last one, I've been asking everyone favorite red zone play. Probably mesh if I had to guess, just because every air raid coach says that. But maybe it's 6 because you're Patrick Taylor.
My favorite red zone play if we're getting a 1 high safety is corner.
Yep.
Because I think you're going to get a good throw to the back of the end zone, and with us being able to tag the backside and open grass to complement that, I think it puts we can get a slant wheel out of the backside, and now they're kind of in a bind on that. So I like to base everything off corner. My second one would be 6 because we can tag so much out of it to create something that hurts the defense.
Right. Exactly. Cool. And this was going to be one of my questions, but I scrapped it. But I'm going to ask it because Coach Hefe wants to know, mesh. Are you reading? Well, I'm going to ask my question, then we can get to his. Are you reading the mesh second or third?
Okay, so we run mesh. If we're going to run it out 2x2, we run it, I guess, like most people associate Mike Leach. We're going to run it with 6-step double outs on the outside, and we're going to run the two slots on the mesh in the back. So I tell our quarterbacks when they come up to the line of scrimmage to find the softest corner. And I want to throw the out because I want to hold the linebackers with the mesh. They've seen mesh for so long that their defensive coaches are like, just cram it. When they go inside, y'all just shove them down the line of scrimmage. Well, great, because you just open up a huge window for me to throw the quick out in. Right. I appreciate that. And so basically what we're going to do in that situation, if that's not the perfect world, if we snap the ball and that corner is good, we're going to go out back mesh. that gives your mesh time to get there, because it actually makes sense. If you go out to back, if the back's open now, that linebacker hadn't had time to recover off trying to cram that mesh. You can get it out to the back now on a glorified toss sweep, and he's turned the corner.
100%.
If you hang on the mesh second, you're giving that defender, he can play both. And you're giving him time to play both. So don't give him time to be able to play both. The other way we run it is we run the snake variation out of trips, where we're going to have, the 3x1, and I'll draw it up for you when we get on playbook. Out of 3x1, the Y and the Z, if you're in trips left, the Y and the Z are meshing, the back is wheeling out of the backfield, and the X and the H are running a follow. So the X follows the H up the stem and breaks off on a dig, and the H runs the post over the top. So you got a post dig mesh, and you got a vertical thread out weak side with the back coming out of the backfield. So it opens up the middle of the field huge. And you usually, more times than not, hit the dig on it. But it's tough because you isolate the corner when you do that to the trip side. He's just hanging out in no man's land. And you're making him play defense with 10, and you're playing with the offense with 11 when you run the snake variation.
Yeah, I've seen that before. That looks really cool. I'm excited to one day get that.
How we teach it? We teach it like shallow. It's shallow it's a double shallow with the dig post with the meals over the top of it. That's all it is.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. Exactly. Very cool. And so it sounds like you run it both ways. That was one of Hefe's questions. You kind of look at the corner and attack that side. Very cool. So, and then you run it out of 3x1 and 2x2, I'm assuming, and 2 back.
Yes, 2 back. It's more we run a lot of post wheel out of it. Instead of because I like that in the goal line. I know you're talking about, I like the 2 back mesh in the goal line, because if they go man free, if you're getting that double wheel out of the backfield and you're getting a post wheel to the twin side with the mesh from the single and the Y, that's hard on a man defense. They got to figure out, are they going to banjo those outside backers on your double wheel? Or are they going to try to have a safety pick that guy up and give up the post? How are they going to do that? And that's one of the things I love about that play is everybody wants to see it out of 2x2. Sometimes I think mesh is better out of 2x1 and a 3x1 set necessarily than it is out of a 2x2 set, because you're forcing the defense to contract with you, and you expand them with those double wheels, and that's tough to play. 2 back means they got to get 7 in the box, or you can run it down their throat. And so if they got 7, they're probably playing some type of 1 high safety, I assume, maybe a 2, but one of those safeties has really got his eye on run support, really. So it's just a lot of ground to cover when you contract and mesh and be able to throw those wheels on the outside.
That's exciting. Awesome. Cool. And I'm assuming you practice it every day. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Absolutely. Okay. Last one, I swear, before we get to 6.
Right.
I swear. Oh, I just love your article on the math behind the O-line play. Okay. I've been walking around with that for a couple of years, trying to hand it to my O-line coaches the last couple of years. And we kind of switch every year because youth football, it's like, we're all volunteers. And I just want to get that into people's head. Like I know it's foreign to you. I know youth football, it's kind of a scary thought, letting your O-line, 12-year-old O-lineman retreat. It's not something that you're used to. And most of us youth coaches, we didn't play anything beyond high school. So probably didn't get into too much of a passing game back in the 90s. Right. So it's foreign to us. Can you just speak briefly on the math behind it? I mean, it makes complete sense when you read it, and it's a long article. I'm going to put it in the link below so everyone can take their time and read it. But I just love the way you break it down in that. Can you just give us a high level idea of why you wrote that article? Yeah,
I'm an analytical guy, so I have to know the why.
Yeah.
I'm terrible at trick plays and stuff like that, because I want the percentage to be in my favor on things and stuff. And so I was sitting in class with our linemen, and they were taking algebra, and I was like, let's figure this out. Because when I tell people about the line splits and the vertical set, I just don't want to be able to tell them because I think it's cool and I think it's the way to do it. Here's a mathematical advantage, because that's what we're all doing, is playing math.
Yep.
And for us, distance, distance equals time. And it goes back to basketball. I'm not, Michael Jordan in his prime, you're not just going to go up there and get in his hip. And LeBron James, you're not going to just go get in his hip and try to play him out there on the perimeter if you're a slower guy, because you're going to get took to the rack every single play in isolation. You're going to play off of him and take the chance of him shooting jumpers or you being able to step up and defend a jumper if he pulls up. And it's kind of the same thing. We also want to tell linemen to keep their shoulders square to the line of scrimmage. And this is what happened to us, and I've seen teams before. When you try to slide in things, you always get back gapped. You always get beat on some type of inside spike in lineman. No matter what, you're going to get beat. And so when we vertical set and we get those wide line splits, you're moving their best pass rushers farther away from the point of attack, the home plate, the quarterback. And anytime you make that hypotenuse longer, that means you're giving yourself more distance and time. And so with our vertical sets, when we vertical set, what we're allowing ourselves to do, because we're so deep by alignment anyway, when we drop back, we're maintaining that pre-snap cushion longer. The neutral zone cushion that you're getting from aligning deeper in vertical set, and we're keeping our shoulders square. So that way, when we get a 3-4 defense that's wanting to stunt players in and out, B gap, C gap, and you're getting all these exotic stunt blitzes, those stunts, those Tim and Tom stunts, are happening in front of us on air. So our linemen are not having to chase. They're able to just keep their shoulders square, and those X stunts are happening, and we're not in combat having to pass them off. They're happening before they get to us.
Nice.
And so now, we're taking out a lot of disguise of the defense, and our splits generally, I would like to have 3 foot across the board. I want 3 foot between guard and tackle.
For sure.
If you got some guards that are not as mobile, 2.5 between guard and center. And we run GT counter in those wide splits. And I'm sorry, it can work because you're forcing the defenders wider away from the ball. So they're not getting an advantage from chasing a play down if they're wider from the ball either. Right. So in the run game, it really doesn't – it's the same thing. But all the X stunts and the blitzes and stuff, it allows it to happen on air so that we don't have to worry about passing it off in hand-to-hand combat. And the one thing, if you have a lesser lineman, the longer you can create space to where they engage with a more athletic or stronger defender, the better off you are. Because if you really watch film on a really good pass rush, a really good come after it pass rush in the NFL, once an offensive lineman engages with a 5 technique or a speed rusher, he's got about 1.5 seconds before he gets home, or the quarterback has to scramble.
Right.
And so if we're dropping and I've got that 18 to 24 inch pre-snap distance or more, and I'm equaling that distance, then I'm giving myself more time to throw the football down the field by vertical setting. Versus if we had everybody sliding right now at the point of attack, I'm opening up backside gaps if they spike hard inside,
right,
hoping my interior lineman can basically do a kick out block.
And he's on.
And you're also limiting the 5 technique on what he can do. If you're tight to the line of scrimmage, he can give you a jab step and get inside real fast. If you're retreating and he gives you a jab step 3 foot in front of you, that's not a threat. Not a threat at all, because now he's got to get vertical sometime or he's just going to run down the line of scrimmage. But, and it goes back to, you can go back into the 60s and read a book by Woody Hayes. He talked about the splits allows a smaller lineman to create more force at the point of attack on a down block versus a tighter split. It was easier to maintain a hole than it was to drive a hole. And so with us, and you get into energy for those guys that have to play people both ways, why do I want to expend energy just because I look tough being shoe to shoe?
Right.
When I can spread those guys out and create the lanes and just maintain them with a lesser athlete. So
Agree. And just like Coach Jolly just wrote in, it's tough to get people that have only ever even heard it one way to understand that, just if you're not going to do this, take the emotion out of it, read this article. It's literally a math equation. Like, if I can back my guys up at the snap of the ball, give me that second. In worst case, he wrestles with him for a second, and then the guy has to take another second to get to the quarterback. Just on its own by itself right there, you've already won. The ball's out.
And going back to the 80s and 90s, you're not going to beat Mike Tyson standing in the middle of the ring going toe-to-toe with him. You got to dance around him and counterpunch and give yourself some space because he wants you to get close. The defense wants to be pressed on you. That's why they play press coverage, and it's the same thing for playing defensive line. They want you tight to the line of scrimmage because it's like playing Red Rover. If I break the first line of there's no space left and I'm running after your quarterback.
Right after him. Exactly. That's huge. And, I don't know. I've seen that you've worked with a lot of middle school and youth coaches in the past. Have you talked to them about this? Like, have you had any case studies where 2-foot splits versus 3-foot? I mean, I think that probably would be a little bit of a anxiety for some of these O-line coaches to do 3-foot at 12 years old. But like, I don't know. I don't really.
But when people tell me that, I turn on footage of like Darrell Royal in Texas in the 70s running the option. And I'm going, if you want to go old school, well, they were doing this 50 or 60 years ago, running the triple option, the 3-foot split. And coaches, like I said, we've had some years where we've had guards that were better in a 2.5 split than they were a 3. And I'm not going to cut my nose off to spite my face. So you stretch it. What I tell people to do is stretch it out as far as you can go and then adjust. But I think if you get inside that 2.5 foot split, you're killing yourself.
Yeah. No, I love it. And that's such great advice. Okay, cool. All right, let's talk 6. The open grass reads. Okay, so if you guys don't know, Coach has written books about his open grass reads. He's on CoachTube. I want to put his CoachTube videos in here so you guys can go consume all of his content. I'll put his book links in here as well. But if you just don't mind telling us, you told us a little bit about your air raid journey when we first started, how you used to pick Hal Mummy's brain, probably still do to some extent. Open grass reads, when you started saying, okay, this is my own, I'm going to start cutting this up the way that it makes sense to me and start serving it up to the kids the way it makes sense to me. Can you take us through that journey to get to this point where you're starting to write books about open grass reads and that type of thing?
Yeah, I look back, my first stint in Georgia, I had a kid, we were a wing T football team, and that's the first offense I learned, and I love that offense. It's a tough offense to defend, and it's a thing of beauty when it's ran right. And it is an equalizer when there's lesser talent. But my first quarterback was tough as nails, and he was an accurate quarterback. He was a wing T guard the year before. And, no kidding. He was a wing T guard the year before. He played shortstop and pitched on the baseball team, and he was incredibly accurate. And he's incredibly tough. And those are the two biggest things I want in a quarterback is accuracy and toughness. And he was a leader. I looked back. We put up about 4,000 yards of offense in 2007. And I look back now and I was like, I taught him and done a good job as far as transitioning him into the offense. Because he was a football savvy kid. He watched football on the weekends, but I really didn't make it easier for him. And then the next year I was bringing up a sophomore to replace him. And I'm like, I don't have a method to the madness. And am I taking advantage of the whole field? And so when I became offensive coordinator at North Surrey, North Surrey was an I formation football team, and we had always had really good running backs. We ran into the problem when we couldn't push people in the playoffs, we lost.
Yeah.
That was just the nail biter. And we come to a year we weren't going to have any running backs, and I wanted to go back to the offensive side of the ball. I taught my head coach into run the air raid. Had to fly Coach Mummy out to convince everybody
nice.
That we could do it. And so and so on and so forth. But I took a kid that had never played quarterback. Here I am again 10 years later in the same situation. He was a receiver, and he was more of a runner than he was a true thrower. And I was like, okay, I got to find a way to make this work for this kid. I've loaded the wagon, and I've told everybody I got one shot at this to get it right. And so, and we didn't switch to it till like late April, early May. So I'm like, I got 3 months to get this thing ready. Nobody on staff had ever coached the offense in any way, shape, or form. And so we were, I was having to teach there and teach kids, and everybody worked, and it was so great. But he was kind of a lab rat for me, is that we're going to teach it like this. He didn't know a whole lot about progression reading and stuff like that. And I have a small window of time to get him ready to play his first football game. And we got in practice one day, and I was just like, when we called for Verts, I was like, hey, just run to your open. And our Y hitched up, and we threw it. And I was like, why don't we just do this?
Yeah.
And why don't we just tag this stuff and have a good time with it? And it kind of just evolved from there. And we've had, Avery Smith left, and he won Player of the Year that year, his first year. And he was a runner thrower. And our next guy coming in that just graduated this year, he was 2-time Player of the Year. He was a true pocket pro style passer. And, but it worked for both of them. And we taught them the same exact way. And as I could see, though, with our last guy, Chase, with him having 4 years, by his graduation his senior year, he was more savvy than the kid I had as a junior. He was starting his first game as a junior. And he played his junior and senior year at quarterback versus wide receiver. So it was just a way for us, Coach. And we knew in our conference, the fastest receiver I have coached at North Surrey is around about a high 4.7. So we don't have any guys that are skinning the 4.5s and the low 4.6s.
Wow.
We just really had to find ways to manipulate defenses to create grass. And I guess because I look at it different than most people, because we don't teach our quarterbacks coverage, we don't teach all that stuff.
Love it.
I really think that it helps a school like I'm at to develop kids faster and to have a rigid way of doing it each year, regardless of if they're a run guy like a Kyler Murray, or if they're a drop back guy like Gardner Minshew was at Washington State. It's the same for both of them, and we just adapt what they can throw and what they're comfortable with. Yeah. But the whole time, both of them have been great in 6 and throwing the open grass reads. I mean, because I think what he said earlier, if we all went and played pickup football right now in the yard, we're going to run to our open.
Yep.
And you as the quarterback is going to throw it to who's open. And so let's not overcomplicate things just because we want to sound smart.
Yep.
Find the hole in the defense, put a receiver in it, and throw the ball. And that's kind of what we do.
Yeah. And so I'm curious, just from my own knowledge, like most of the people I've seen run 4 verts, they do it, you pick a side and the outside guy pushes up, and a lot of them do like 12-yard comeback.
Drop out. Yeah.
Comeback, and the middle guy goes vertical. I mean, I'm curious why you didn't think that was why you wanted to find a different way, I guess is what I'm asking. Because I'm glad you did, because I don't think I could run 4 verts that way at the middle school level. The way you do it works for me.
I think that the reason we done it is because, and I don't mean to sound sweet, logically it made sense to me.
Yeah.
I have an engineering background, so I'm trying to strip everything down to the bare essentials to get it to run at the highest premium level. And I got tired of – I loved 4 verticals, the true 4 verticals, and we still run true 4 verticals sometimes when it converts into it. But that's such a low percentage. Yeah. Back when in trips, when we were seeing cover 3 a lot in trips, it was great. You read the safety, you throw the seamer, you throw the over.
Yep.
We're not seeing that anymore. And with defenses, what I call sugar in coverage, where they're hiding coverage, and it's not just a press bail anymore. It's a flat 4 like Palms look, and they might be, playing all kind of. You've got to have receivers that can respond. And so when everybody talks about it's hard on the quarterback, I think it's easier.
Yeah.
And if you get those rules to the kids, I think that we keep the reads the same. That's the thing too. Like there is a progression to it. So it's not just, oh, look, let me look. If something there's now, throw it. But if it's going to be a read progression where we're going to snap the ball and we're actually going to have to set up and look down the field, there is a progression to it, and that in itself makes it where it's not as much backyard football. But at the same time, Coach, I couldn't do without it. I don't even know why I run any other quick game. I don't. I just love corner and stick so much. But if the chips are down, there's two play calls I'm calling, and that's 6 and counter. Those are the run and the pass play I'm calling. If the game is on the line, I'm calling one of those 2 plays based on the situation, just because it's so. And Coach, this is it. Going back to we was talking about talent. If I can get a lesser kid open in space by creating space by tagging one route, I used to have all this quick game in slant flat, curl flat, slant wheel, and I didn't have enough time to practice all that stuff.
Right.
But if I put this base play in and I just start tagging routes that's already in our route combinations, in our concepts, the kids already know how to do it. The quarterback knows how to read it. And it's made our playbook more dynamic week to week. And the biggest thing I think about 6 that people, you look at it, what our opponents get on Friday from Friday night's game, and the defense coordinator is typing that thing in, or Huddle's typing it in. When he prints that report, our playbook looks that thick.
It's just one play.
And it's one play. But not only that, he's practicing against that combination of routes. So when he sets up to defend those routes, I just tagged the complementary route off of what he set up. And now so for a whole week, he's been chasing ghosts. And so, we always talk about that in the wing team, make them chase ghosts. And, with all the motion and stuff, it was just a way for me to make a team and give me the marker last. I'm on the whiteboard last, and I hope we just connect with the play.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm just taking notes. I'm sorry, man. This is just
that's all right.
Talking to you. I don't know what analogy I need to use right now, but for someone like to read all these different coaches and do all this research, and then actually getting to talk to the guy that actually connects to my brain, this is just such great stuff for me. So 2 things I want to pull out of that to talk with the audience about. Okay. So yes, 100%. So the way we do it, get in 3x1 or 2x2. If they're 7 yards, they're off. We're running sticks, and it's a no-brainer. We're throwing to one of those sticks. They get to choose, but whichever one they feel most comfortable with, we're going to do that all day until they all come up. And then if we're in 2x2, it goes. We have our slot on the left. We call them F. It goes F, the left slot to the right slot, and then to the back. And I think and we just read the safety just like you taught it. If he goes back or to his left, we're throwing that. We're banging that F all day, and then obviously the opposite. But we're putting that safety in conflict. If we go 3x1, I like it even more because we're doing the same thing. We're basically bending that F and Y around him, and whoever he takes, we're throwing to the other one. So just like you said, simplicity wise, the kids aren't learning anything new. We're attacking the same guy. If we do have to get to a point where we're going downfield, we want to stay short as much as possible. But if they make us, we're gonna go ahead and take some deep shots on them. So I love that. You reinforce that to this community that's been watching what I've been doing. And I think at the youth level, I think that is as simple as it gets. I don't know. And not to mention the arm strength to get on the outside receivers at this level. Some of them can do it, but if you're talking about a seam throw 15 yards down the field, these youth guys, they can do that. I don't care if you're 7th grade or 6th grade or whatever, they can make that throw. And then secondly, what you're talking about tagging, guys, I want you to go watch this Coach Taylor's videos on on CoachTube, because I'm telling you, he has film of 7-on-7 and in games where he's just running 6 the whole time, and he sees a way to exploit one piece of the defense, and he can put one of his receivers on a shallow. And these kids know, like you said, once you've installed these plays and installed these concepts and even just installed the routes, you as a coach can see it. Now, I don't know if at the youth level they could all get out there and call it on the fly. I think my quarterback last year could have done it, but not all of them can. But you as a coach, you can. And if you see something, youth game is quiet enough where we could yell out before the play call and say, hey, Y is on a shallow, whatever your symbol is for a shallow, or Y is on a stick, and just tag it on the run. and it makes it even more fun for us coaches. So, to your point, I honestly felt like I could run 6 an entire game last year and not feel like it would be the same thing, because you could just tag off of it. And just by you being a coach that knows football, understanding where those tags should be. So it's just such a versatile play, especially the way you run it. So thanks for breaking that down for us a little bit. Open grass. I get a lot of questions about what the best drills are. I mean, obviously there's settle noose. We're all kind of doing that. But are there any other drills that you kind of break out to kind of drill that home, the open grass reads?
Not really, because we have 4 things we teach our quarterbacks. The first thing we want to talk about to them is we want them to answer 4 questions pre-snap. And I talk about this a lot in one of my books, but I want them to create a recording in their brain, because your eyes tell your brain a whole lot. And so we start out with, what's the first route in my progression? Is it open by alignment? And that tags the brain, and it's a yes or no question. And that go ahead and gives the brain a process to start. The next thing we talk about, the next question we want him to ask is, who is the 2-3 player? That's the flat player. Mm-hmm. So who would be the flat player in this situation? And we call it 2-3, like the option, because he's your keep pitch kind of guy. And thirdly, is there any sign of blitz? And then for us, fourth, is there any open grass to the backside? And with those 4 questions, if he asks those 4 questions pre-snap, he's creating a process for progression. And so when he snaps the ball, yes, he's still going to look at that very first question, because the defense could have moved. That route in his first progression might not have been open by alignment, but it snapped the ball, the defensive moves, it comes open, he's alert to throw it. So it creates brain triggers. That's how we base our whole offense around, is those brain triggers. So that, pre-snap is so rational, rule-based rationale. Post-snap is all reaction. And I equate it to blinking your eyes. Post-snap for a quarterback is blinking your eyes. You do it without telling yourself to. So you have to play with reaction. And if your brain doesn't have a process to go through, a definite process, not just a 1, 2, 3. Well, why am I throwing that 1, 2, 3? Make the brain record something to look for post-snap to react off of. And by doing that, you're setting yourself up for a whole lot. But every day, coach, we come in, we start off with noose, pat and goes, routes on air, and that's our 3 things that we do. Oh. The crazy part about it is my quarterback coach this year done a crazy stat. We were 55% on one-on-one fade balls this year.
It's huge.
And me and him look back. There was a year that we didn't do as much pat and goes in practice, and we stunk at it. Mm. The reason we were so good at what we've done this year is because we throw pat and goes every day. So we're going to be good at it. And another stat was crazy. Is like Mike Leach, they said at Texas Tech, was in the 50-something percentile one year in the one-on-one fade balls. The NFL was at like 28, and college football was at 35. And it was because they do that every day.
Right.
And so I don't sacrifice those 3 drills, because it teaches everything I need to teach, from throwing to catching, without coming up with a cool drill. We do foot fire as a warm-up with the cones with the receivers, but that's really it. I mean, it's the same thing every day. Punch a time card, come in, do it, and punch a time card and go home.
Yeah.
I don't mean to sound that rigid about it, but
that's the
process. What we do is more important to get the process out versus the stuff that we invent.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's your air raid team when you're running those plays or those drills. You're still doing the tennis ball drill, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I've told these guys about that, but you want to just talk about that just for 2 seconds? I'd love.
Yeah, we have a walkthrough drill that I think that's really good, and I could allude to that too, Coach. That's my fault. When we start out in the spring and stuff, we will actually get in a gym and line up in 2x2 or whatever, and the concept of the day. whatever it be, and we're going to go 40%. Line up a 7-on-7 shell defense in any way you want to. We can script it to get different looks, blitzes, and everything else. And basically what I'm doing is we'll call, let's say, corner, and we're going to run corner to the right. I don't let them throw open grass in this drill because I want to work the progression. I want to work the concept in this drill. I want to teach the concept. The open grass is eye candy and it's easy. I want you to be able to throw the concept and learn it. So he's going to snap the ball, and we're going to go through at 40%. The coverage is going to drop and react while we're running it. And I want him to throw the tennis ball to the receiver that's correct in the progression. And with that, I can see his reaction and know what to coach, the good and the bad. Mm. Instead of asking him a question when I've trained him to give me the right answer, I can see his reaction and know how to coach. So it allows me to create an assessment and a drill at the same time. You can do it on a field, you can do it on a basketball court, you can do it in a parking lot, you can do it anywhere. But you can take 10 minutes a day of your time in the spring or after weightlifting or whatever, and go in a gym and do concept of the day, and get a lot of reps at 40%. And what are we doing as teachers? We talk a lot about scaffolding. It's 40% 7-on-7, and it's a controlled experiment. So that when we go out on the field, we build it up. When we get in live 7-on-7, he's seeing moving parts. He's ready to go full speed. So that's one of the big things there.
No, I love that. And, the fact that it's so portable, you can do it anytime. And
use a tennis ball. I know there's one of my buddies in Charlotte's used a Nerf football, which is kind of cool because it's kind of, an old school, but I don't care if the receiver catches it. I really want to see at this point in time, did we run the right route? Did we make the right decision? Right. That's what I want from that drill. It is a cognitive drill that has muscle movement in it.
Absolutely. No, and it's such a it's such a perfect drill to start with, especially if you guys out there are starting to get into running six like this. Like I definitely would suggest anyone in the youth and middle school level to run it this way. I mean, that is a great way to start it off, nice and easy. Walk till you're open, jog till you're open, however you want to do it, and throw them the dang ball. And it's like Coach said, not only are they understanding it, but you can see their thought process that way too. As coaches. So that's huge. And one other point I wanted to talk about, Coach, and I love this about the way you teach, is like everything, and this drill is a perfect example. Everything is taught on the field. You guys do very little chalk talk with the kids. Is that right?
Yeah, and that goes back to, I know it's kind of scientific and nerdy. Your brain sees a whiteboard in 2D. Mm-hmm. So it has no depth, no height, no width. It has no projection. And so your brain records that learning completely different than if you're in a gym and there's all of those aspects of the visual recording to the brain. It's kind of like stepping off a curb. Your brain realizes that you're going to have to step down before you get there, versus if you saw that curb if you just saw a line on a floor with no depth change, you're not going to worry about stepping. You're going to keep walking. And so that's why we cut it out. I had a lot of quarterbacks at one time that could pass paper tests on the progressions versus this coverage and all this other stuff. And we would get out there and they couldn't function when there was bullets flying at them, as in players blitzing, or there was depth and things to worry about and space and leverage. I just cut it out because, again, why did we do that? Is it so we as coaches sound smart talking about our offense? Or is it so, I always call it, I was creating dysfunctional puppets instead of dynamic players. I mean, I know I use that a lot, but I had a lot of guys that could teach you the air raid offense. I didn't have a lot of guys that could play it.
Yep.
And so for us, that drill got them playing it. And we still don't have a playbook. We still don't have a playbook. It's not, it's kind of, we don't write it down anywhere. So it's kind of one of those things.
Yeah. No,
we
I
have
love
some stuff in there for coaches, but I don't hand out a playbook. We just teach it. I mean, we teach it. Here's a 10-yard dig. Here's a shallow through the defensive lineman's feet. Keep running. I mean, we teach it like that so that they learn to visualize it and take it in.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge, and I love that. I absolutely love that, because life is happening in 3D, and you might as well be repping it that way. I'm going to let you speak to this one. I mean, I know what I've been teaching off of yours, but so is the 7 yard? Do you guys use that 7-yard barrier?
It is. It's a 6 to 7. And it's a team's kind of like a 7, and they're out there quick, or 6 and they're getting out quick. Veteran receivers will snap it off on a stick, even when they're showing us something a little shorter. But 7 is usually that. And yes, this question about communicating, that is our base rule when we put in 6. Everybody's on the same page. When we talk about the run till you're open and telling the quarterback who's open now, throw it. That's our 2 rules based on that progression. They know right now that we're going to run that 3-step stick if they're at that level or more by default. So it could turn into 4 hitches all the way across the board easily. If they had defenders in a prevent, we're going to run 4 hitches. And we have our other rule that we use is the route replace that says if the guy inside of me is hitching, then I've got my vertical lane plus his vertical lane to work vertical. Oh. If there's a press, if there's a guy that's off, but your guy's pressed, if he's hitching, then I can work all of my space plus his, and that's how we kill people in trips. Because I call routes against man to man. I'll call a hitch against press man because I'll tag somebody on a hitch against press man because as a defensive coordinator, we always told our guys, if he goes to the water bucket, you better go with him.
Yep.
Well, if I can just run a hitch and hold a defender, that gives me more grass over the top for my slot to work. And so, that's the kind of thing we kind of go. But we have that base rule you're talking about, the 6 or 7 or more. And then we have the route replace rule based on tagging. And that's the only 2 rules we use in the whole 6 concept. That's the only 2 rules.
Yeah. And to Coach Hefe's question, is repped so much. Yeah, I mean, we do it every day. I'm sure this being this play to you guys, you do it every day with whether it's the tennis ball drill or just getting in routes on air. I mean, you guys probably rep it daily in multiple drills, I'm assuming.
And I'll tell you this. I put this in. I drove out to Missouri a couple of years ago and put this in for a team in 2 days. And if you go out there with your kids when we get back and you just line them up in 2x2 and put whatever shell defense you want to against them and say, guys, you just run to your open and stop. They're going to do it naturally.
Yep.
They're going to do it naturally. And so there's not much teaching to it once you get that rule down.
100%. And honestly, to your point, like even if they're 6 or 7 or 8, and it's in that gray area where the kids aren't sure, and for some reason the kid makes a mistake and tries to get over the top, we're also talking every day, like if you are trying to do that and he's clearly not going to let you, just break it off there. I mean, it's all part of the conversation with it, but you got to start, like Coach just said, with these hard rules. Like there's no gray area when we start this off. It's 7 yards or more. We say 7, it's a rule. And if you don't do it, you're probably going to hear from me about it. Right. And if you don't throw it, you're probably going to hear from me about it. And then as they get used to it, more comfortable, you'll start to see them break it off at 6 or wherever they feel like it's the time. The quarterback, they all kind of sync up together and really start to get it.
And as soon as they start trying to rob the stick, just tag a route by the next outside guy that's going to employ the space that safety's trying to vacate or that corner's trying to, that's vacated, and boom, you got your shot play.
No, I love that. And I somehow I missed that on the video. I love the fact that outside receiver can kind of come into that vertical seam that the slot was going to take. I absolutely love that. I'm adding that for sure. Very cool. Awesome. And then, so Curtis just said my 11-year-old nephew was playing around with it and he learned it in 15 minutes just by Coach just talking to him in the backyard. So I'm curious, the youngest team you tried to implement this with, in your experience, have you taught this to 6th graders or below even?
There was a middle school team in Kentucky that put 6 in after the first year we ran it in 2015. And they do the walkthrough drill and whatnot. And I could go back through my Twitter and find he sent me a clip of them doing the walkthrough drill in the gym.
That's awesome.
There's there's several middle school teams that have called and talked to me about it. There's a 8-man football team in Oklahoma that does it. That's in a smaller area of Oklahoma, and I've had one upper level youth, probably in like the 10 to 12-year-old range that's doing it.
Yeah,
and it's simple. I mean, that's why I said it's so applicable to what we naturally do as players.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna send you my all Verts cut up so you can see it. It was so much fun. I actually just got off the phone before we got on the call today. I was talking to my coach that's coaching the 5th and 4th grade team this year, and I think we could run a version of all hitches. I don't know if they can go deep, but I mean, basically we want to start introducing this at 5th grade, and then they get to middle school and they're off and running. So I'm excited about it, and I think this is just it could go all the way down if you do it properly, right? You have to have a coach that knows what he's doing at that level. But great. Okay, cool. We're pushing up on an hour and a half, so I'm not going to take too much of your time. Got a couple more questions. One just came in from Mike Hardwick. He's been running air raid actually out in Mississippi. Mike has at the middle school over for a decade. He's the longest one I've found so far. What's up, Mike? Main concepts, if you could choose, and maybe you do have a choice with your feeder schools, the youth program that feeds you, concepts that you would like them to understand before they got to you?
I would like for them to know the quick game. I do think that with stick, that being stick corner, the 66, the hitch slot fade, and the 617, 619, which is the fade and the quick outs on the inside, they're mirrored. 66 and that 617, 619 are mirrored. Because I do think, and I'm not, if you can run the full offense, I'm great. If you can run shallow and those kind of things, I'm great. I would like for you to learn the quick game just because it is going to teach you some progression.
Yeah.
Whether the kid can really throw the corner route or not, which I think most of them can if you just teach them to throw it on time, and you teach them to break the route based on the goal, where they are on the field versus just running a true corner route.
Yep.
Like we used to teach a long time ago. I like the quick game aspect because you're teaching pass protection. You're teaching everything that's going to be the basis of the offense. And if you can throw like a tunnel screen or some type of smoke screen in it, I know that's sometimes hard for certain middle school kids. But if you could tag one screen in with it, I think that's good because it's teaching linemen, some screen blocking also. But that's kind of the things that I would kind of press forward because I think every kid could throw stick.
For sure.
I think every kid can throw the snag corner, and I think, you can throw some version, as you've shown, you can run 6 in middle school because it's second nature. It is. Yep. And I think that would be kind of what I would kind of stick with because you've got everything you need, from that standpoint. If you could sneak shallow in, it would be great. But, sometimes it may be hard getting a middle schooler to read a middle of the field triangle layered route, and linebackers don't move. And they don't move as much, I don't guess. You're either going to get blitzed or they're going to stand there. So it's one of the two. Yeah,
they're not really reading the O lineman. So, yeah, like you said, they're standing there or they're blitzing. So, yeah, we had stick, corner, verts, quick screens, and then we did run shallow. But we had some trouble getting them across the middle with the O-line protection. So we've moved them to the backfield. I just did a video with another high school coach, and he's motioning them. He's basically motioning one of the slot guys to 3-by-1. Basically, it's drive, but it's basically shallow with the guy. So we're trying to figure out better ways to do shallow to make it quicker for middle school. But, yeah, we went to war with basically 3 quick games, quick screens, and a couple runs, and that's what we did. We did great with it, and we just love it. So that's great advice. Thank you. Okay, cool. So I just want to wrap up by kind of talking through a couple things that you're up to. We talked about it earlier today, but I want to rehash about the air raid, the National Air Raid Clinic that's coming up. You're speaking at that with a bunch of great speakers. So, what date did you say about that? That was again before people got.
That's the weekend. That's the weekend of June 19th. That weekend there, I think it's 19th, 20th, 21st.
Okay.
That's going to be the whole weekend. I'm speaking that Friday, which will be I think the 19th.
Very cool.
I think it's at 5:30 or so.
You're talking.
And I'm going to talk about the 4 verticals and break it all down.
Love it. Love it. So tune into that. You guys can get into the X's and O's with Coach and see a lot of really great speakers for that. And then you've started a new venture, Coach. I was so excited to hear you talk about this when we were chatting. You're starting a new venture. You want to talk to these guys about that a little bit? What you're planning on starting?
Yeah, I wanted to start. I know there's 1,000 podcasts out there, and I wanted to start a podcast that has nothing really to do with X's and O's. I think the hardest thing and we're seeing it across the board and in every aspect, building relationships with kids, and the mental and the psychological things that our kids are facing now, and how to and I'm talking about from socioeconomical statuses. I'm talking about from home life to everything and how you deal with that. I think that was one thing as a young coach. We're all gung ho about X's and O's, and that is a great part of the game and what hires you and fires you. I do think that 99% of what you can get a kid to do is based on the relationship you have with that kid, and so on and so forth. So I really wanted to get into the psychological background of it and kind of get a piece where I interviewed some coaches about how to do that from a practical level and some things that they've done to help those situations in different situations. Yeah. And to be able to help us as coaches and things of that nature, because, at the end of the day, we are trying to build it better than our generation was and is. And that's important for us going forward as a society and as coaches and everything. And I thought, I've done a lot, and I'm still going to do a lot of stuff with the air raid and stuff, but it's something that I've always wanted to do. And I hope it can be a help to some people. It might be a one-hit wonder, but I hope it can be some help, because I didn't want to jump in and just talk about offense, defense, and stuff like that. I really wanted to say, here's an area that we never talk about at clinics that might be important, a lot more important than we give it really a credit for.
Yeah. No, and I applaud you for that, Coach. I mean, I'm sure you'd get a lot of listeners just to listen to you talk X's and O's. But that topic in particular, it's so important, and it's obviously so timely right now. I mean, no doubt about that. But just in general, I mean, at the root of it all, like 99% of us coaches are doing it to connect with kids and help them through their journey. And probably we were all impacted by football as one of those things that made us, maybe act a little bit more in line, or maybe we found our passion at that point, or whatever the case may be. I mean, football is so much more than X's and O's. So I applaud you for doing that. I'll be a listener. I'll be the first subscriber possible. When is that starting off? Is it already going?
I'm going to try to kick it off later this month. I've been putting some stuff together and learning how to podcast and stuff like that. And I'm pretty technological savvy. But it was a new thing, and trying to get it to sound right and stuff like that. And I do want to make it not a waste of time for coaches. I really want to find some things that you're going to get something out of and everything. And like you said, football is a way where you learn to appreciate people, and you appreciate, even when we were players, you learn to appreciate people that you didn't even know or necessarily grow up with. And as coaches, you learn to appreciate kids and the guys you work with. And for some of us, we've grown up from all over the parts of the world and come from different situations, and we bring different things to the table that helps kids on our team.
Yeah. For sure. Well, thank you for doing that. I'll be listening in, and I'll put, like I keep saying, I'll put everything that we have from Coach tonight in the summary below, so you can click on the links and consume all of his content. And please join him for that podcast, because that is next level stuff that if you're not worried about that as a coach, especially at our youth level and middle school level, you really should be thinking about it from that lens as well. So awesome. And then good. I'll put all your books. I'll put everything in the chat below. All right. Last thing I'm going to ask you for these youth and middle school coaches, advice for coaches that are teaching at this level. Anything in particular that you've found along your journey that might help and be applicable to us youth guys?
I will tell you this. And this is probably without being like the old cliche, that people use. What drove this open grass reads was me as a coach I stopped putting parameters on what I thought kids could do, and we did it by trial by error. And so I threw away everything that said I'm scared to try this because I was teaching my kids to fail by doing that. And so if you go out there at practice one day and you say, we're going to try this, you may have to adapt it and shrink it down a little bit. And I'm not just talking about the play. I'm talking about coaching in general, or what you're wanting to call, or what you're wanting to do. You might have to, shrink that down and compress it a little more than what you originally forgotten, but it's not a waste of time and it's not a waste of effort. Don't pigeonhole what kids can do. Coaches at all levels do that, and it cripples them. Kids can do what you teach them to do, and they can execute what their ability is. And so don't go in there and say, well, I only got middle school kids, I can only do this. That's not true at all. That's not true at all. Kids can do what you can teach them and what you believe in, you got conviction about, and have fun. Have fun with this, because being a coach is one of the most important things you can ever decide to do. And just let it hang out and have fun with them, and don't pigeonhole yourself.
Man, I can see why I connected with your all Verts. I mean, what you just said is the exact message I've been saying since I tried to install this. I said that to all the guys before me, that I had to take out the De La Salle split back veer guys, and these kids can't do that. Like, stop saying stuff like that. They can, and they do it in 7-on-7 all day long. They do it in flags and say we're fourth graders. They can do it if you just give them the tools to do it. Like, they're not going to be perfect at it the first day, but if you practice it and drill it right, they will get it, and they can do it at a high level. No doubt about it. So thank you, Coach, for those words of encouragement for us youth coaches. It's a great game down here. It's a little different than high school level, but I think we can use guys like you that have been dominating with the air raid, and just teachers in general, and are innately wanting to help others. Use what you're teaching us. Hopefully you guys got a lot of value out of this out there watching. And I can't thank you enough, Coach, for coming on. So thank you so dang much.
Thank you, Coach. And guys, if you ever need anything, don't hesitate to contact me. I'll help you any way I can.
Yes, sir. Okay, guys, we're going to sign off for tonight, but thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Like this video if you did like it, and make sure you go click on the links for Coach down in the summary below, so you can get all his content and dive deep with him. But until we talk next time, guys, keep spreading the ball around, and let's keep getting these participation numbers back up by letting these kids have the fun that they do with running this offense. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Coach. And we'll talk to you guys soon.
All right.